Hello again, everyone. I'm Father Joe Nazzle from Cennino Mission House in Berkeley. The scene in this Sunday's Gospel of people lining up at the door where Jesus was staying is similar to what is happening around the country, where we see long lines of people to receive the vaccine to combat the coronavirus. Mark writes the whole town was gathered at the door, and Jesus cured many who were sick with various diseases. The gospel highlights the healing ministry of Jesus and is especially timely given the millions who've been diagnosed with the coronavirus and the hundreds of thousands who have died. But millions have survived COVID-19 because of the tireless work of doctors and nurses and EMTs and so many others who are on the front lines of the medical response to the pandemic. Their competence and compassion and stamina are incredible. Their physical endurance is remarkable, working long hours to the point of exhaustion. But their emotional, mental, and spiritual strength is also admirable, as they've struggled to save so many lives only to have them die. Some of the best scenes from this pandemic are those of doctors and nurses and hospital personnel lining the hall to applaud a patient being released from the hospital after weeks or months of battling the coronavirus. We are the ones who should be lining the streets to celebrate the heroic efforts of healthcare and frontline workers who are saving so many lives. As the rollout of the vaccine continues unevenly, patience is really the virtue we all need. And the gospel gives us a clue as to why Jesus was able to show such compassion after keeping such a hectic pace of healing all those who were lined up at his door. Realizing he needed to take a break before his patience wore thin and his energy wore out, rising very early before dawn, he left and went off to a deserted place where he prayed. In the stress and anxiety of this time, as people get tested and others get sick, and hopefully all get the vaccine, patience rooted in prayer is vital if we are to get through the next few months. So find a deserted place and try to catch your breath by sitting in prayer. Find a nook or cranny or corner and just breathe. Breathe in God's peace and love. Job could have used such a breather. Our first reading from the book of Job, who, if we were gathering for Super Bowl parties this weekend, would not be high on the guest list because he is downright depressing. His life has become a living hell. He has endured unspeakable loss and unbearable suffering. The book of Job is often viewed through the lens of innocent suffering, raising the unanswerable question, why do the innocent suffer? I've heard that question often and have raised it myself. There were certainly months after my sister died, like Job, when I felt like I'd been assigned to months of misery and troubled nights that seemed to drag on forever. After Mary died, Job's words became my own. Our days are swifter than the weaver's shuttle. They come to an end without hope. I shall not see happiness again. So many people have raised that question this last year. Why is there so much suffering in the world? Why does God, who's all-powerful and all-loving, allow innocent people to suffer? As a professor of mine wrote, questions like these have never been satisfactorily answered. Instead of telling us why, Jesus shows us how. Jesus never really answered the question why innocent people suffer in this life. Instead, he shows us how to respond to the suffering we experience. Whether it's the mother-in-law of a friend who's down in bed with a fever, or a crowd of strangers huddled at the front door who present a wide range of illnesses, Jesus shows us how to respond to the suffering. He embodies what our psalmist says. God heals the brokenhearted. God binds up all of our wounds. We've been reminded often the past 11 months through the witness of so many how God indeed heals the brokenhearted. There is hope, there is life, there is compassion, there is God. And yet, like Job, there are still doubts and fears and feelings of misery. And there's that constant tension to know that God gives us the voice, to know that Job gives us the voice of lamentation when we're feeling in the depths of despair and pain, but that Jesus also gives us the voice of compassion, that we're never alone in our suffering. that God is always with us. When we look more closely at the healing ministry of Jesus, we see how Jesus focused on the root causes that made people sick. He addressed causes, not the symptoms of the evil. People were not acting themselves. The goodness within them had become infected. But when Jesus addressed himself to that evil and touched those who were afflicted, the evil was driven out and the people were restored. They became their true selves again. When Peter's mother-in-law felt like her old self after the fever left her, she immediately began serving others because that's who she was. She was a person of hospitality. Jesus addresses himself not just to fevers and frustrations that grip individuals, he also confronts the social and ecclesial structures that were designed to keep people imprisoned in illness. He addressed the fevers in society that kept people from being themselves. He was engaged in a healing ministry, which was central to the announcement that the reign of God is at hand. He was about restoring people to wholeness. His healthcare plan was simple and direct: meet the people in their need and heal them. This was universal healthcare that included making house calls. As a living expression of God's compassion, Jesus offered himself. He was a touch of a hand or a bedside manner, treating not only the physical symptoms of the patient, but the spiritual sickness as well. As missionary disciples who seek to bring healing and hope to others, we know there are no miracle cures, no magic potions. But as we continue to do what we need to do to protect others and ourselves from the coronavirus, the prescription that has become a mantra, maintain social distance, wear masks, wash our hands, and now line up for that vaccine. And in the shelter and care of our prayer, we can also offer whatever we can to help others not feel so alone. Whether it's a phone call or a text or an email or a card, to keep connected to those who we love, but also to those who feel so isolated. This is our best self at work. So may we be patient, find the nook or cranny or corner to catch our breath, and never lose hope that indeed God does heal the brokenhearted and binds up all our wounds. Oh, and one last thing. Go Chiefs. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe.